Behind every historical fact lies a deeper secret. Welcome to Veil Theory.
The heartbreaking story behind Wake Me Up When September Ends. In 2004, Green Day released one of the most emotional songs in rock history. Millions of people connected with it. Millions sang along to it. But very few people know that the title of the song came from something a 10-year-old boy said after his father died. Not during an interview, not on a stage, not inside a recording studio, at a funeral. Those 6 words would stay with him for more than 20 years, and eventually become one of the most famous song titles in modern music. This is the true story behind Wake Me Up When September Ends. The day everything changed. To understand this song, we need to go back to September 1st, 1982. That was the day Billie Joe Armstrong's father, Andy Armstrong, died from esophageal cancer. Billie Joe was only 10 years old. For months, his father had been battling cancer. Then the fight ended. Family and friends gathered for the funeral. People cried. People shared memories. But for a 10-year-old child, none of it made sense. According to multiple accounts, Billie Joe became overwhelmed with grief. He cried uncontrollably. Then he ran home from the funeral, locked himself inside his bedroom, and refused to come out. When his mother knocked on the door and asked him what was wrong, he gave a reply that nobody could have imagined would one day become famous around the world. He said, "Wake me up when September ends." At the time, it was simply the response of a grieving child. But those words would never leave him. Life goes on. As the years passed, Billie Joe grew older. He found comfort in music. What started as a hobby slowly became a passion. Then, in 1989, he formed a band called Sweet Children. At first, it looked like just another local punk band, but that detail would later become important, because Sweet Children was formed exactly 7 years after his father's death. A year later, the band changed its name. The new name was Green Day. Nobody knew it yet, but Green Day would eventually become one of the biggest rock bands in the world. Albums sold millions. Concerts sold out. The band's popularity exploded throughout the 1990s. From the outside, it looked like Billie Joe had moved on, but some memories never truly disappear. The song that almost never happened. Now here's the part many fans don't know. Wake Me Up When September Ends wasn't originally released in 2004. The song was first recorded in 2002, exactly 20 years after his father's death. And that's where another hidden detail begins to make sense. 20 years had passed, yet the memory remained. The song was originally planned for Green Day's compilation album, Shenanigans. Everything was ready. Then Billie Joe changed his mind. He pulled the song from the project. Not because the song wasn't good enough, not because the record label rejected it, because he wasn't emotionally ready. According to reports, the song was simply too personal for him at that moment. Think about that. A man who could stand in front of thousands of people on stage wasn't ready to sing one song, because that song brought him back to being 10 years old. So the track stayed hidden for another 2 years. The perfect place for the song. In 2004, Green Day began work on American Idiot. The album was loud, political, aggressive. Many of the songs criticized American culture and politics during the George W. Bush era. Then, right in the middle of all that anger, sat one very different song, Wake Me Up When September Ends. A song with no political message, no social commentary, no rebellion, just grief. And maybe that's why it stood out. Among all the loud voices on American Idiot, this one felt personal. For the first time, Billie Joe was finally ready to tell a story he had carried for more than 2 decades. The song was released as the 4th single from the album, and listeners immediately connected with it. The hidden details inside the lyrics. One reason this song feels so personal is because Billie Joe quietly hid pieces of his own life inside the lyrics. Take this line: "7 years has gone so fast." At first, it sounds like a simple reflection on time, but according to interpretations linked to the song's timeline, those 7 years point to the period between his father's death in 1982 and the formation of Sweet Children in 1989. Then there's another line: 20 years has gone so fast. This one is even more direct. The song was first recorded in 2002, exactly 20 years after his father died. Suddenly, the lyric takes on a completely different meaning. It's not just about time moving quickly. It's about realizing that 20 years have passed, yet the pain still feels close. Years later, Billie Joe explained that the song was inspired by the sadness he continued to feel as time moved forward. That's what makes the song unique. Many artists write about loss. Very few wait 20 years before telling the story. The music video everyone misunderstood. Then came the music video. Directed by Samuel Bayer, the same director behind Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit. The video starred Jamie Bell and Evan Rachel Wood. Most fans expected the video to focus on Billie Joe's father. It didn't. Instead, it told a completely different story. The video followed a young couple living in America during the period after the September 11th attacks. In other words, the video wasn't about Billie Joe's personal tragedy. It was about a nation's tragedy. It's an interesting irony. A song inspired by one family's loss became connected to the grief of an entire country. And somehow, that made the song even more powerful. The story behind Wake Me Up, When September Ends, isn't really about a hit song. It's about a sentence spoken by a child during the worst moment of his life. A sentence that stayed with him for more than 20 years. A sentence that eventually became one of the most recognizable song titles in modern music. And maybe that's the real lesson behind this story. Pain doesn't always disappear. Some experiences stay with us for years, sometimes for a lifetime. But that doesn't mean they have to define us. Billie Joe Armstrong could have kept that memory locked away forever. Instead, he turned it into music. And in doing so, he created a song that helped millions of people express feelings they struggled to put into words. Because no matter who we are, everyone carries memories they never forget. The difference is what we choose to do with them. And Billie Joe Armstrong turned his into one of the most powerful songs of his generation.